I woke up that morning to the kind of silence that doesn't just fill the air. It presses down on your chest. Not peaceful, not calming. Dead silence. The kind that reminds you no one else lives here anymore. It had been 20 months since my wife Linda passed away, and every damn morning I still reached across the bed half asleep, expecting to find her hand. Nothing. At 77, your joints don't ease you into the day. They fight you. But I got up anyway, made my way downstairs, poured my usual black coffee. Doctor be damned. Herbal tea, he said. Heart safe, he said. Yeah? So is dying of boredom. If I've made it this far drinking real coffee, I'm not about to switch now. I stood out on the terrace of the house I built myself, designed every corner of it down to the last bolt, overlooking the east side of Toledo, not a neighbor in sight. Linda and I dreamed of this place when we were young. She took care of the garden. I took care of the structure. Now a gardener handles the plants, and the place still looks perfect, but it doesn't feel like home without her hands in the soil. That morning I got a message from my daughter, Lauren. No greeting. No, "Hi, Dad, how are you?" Just, "Me and Mark will stop by Sunday around 4. We need to talk." I stared at it. No emotion. Just a cold notice. That's Lauren. Straight to business. She takes after me in that way, except she skipped the warmth part. Or maybe she buried it so deep I forgot where to look for it. I replied, "Okay, I'll be waiting." Sundays used to mean brunches, laughter, chores in the garden, dumb jokes from Linda that made me groan and laugh at the same time. Now, they meant Lauren checking in like a caseworker, usually with an agenda. By Saturday, the silence was chewing at my nerves, so I went into town. There's this little used bookstore I like on Maple Street. Hamish, the guy who owns it, he's a bit younger, loves historical biographies. He's one of the few people I can still talk to without wanting to walk away halfway through the conversation. He asked how Lauren was. I just said, "She's coming Sunday." Didn't need to explain more. He knows. Sunday came, and I cooked chicken with vegetables, the only real dish I can make without screwing it up. Set the table in the dining room, even though I knew damn well Lauren would say something like, "Why so formal, Dad?" Still, I did it, out of habit, out of pride. I don't know. Right at 4 her SUV pulled up. Punctual. She always is. Efficient, sharp, and colder than winter asphalt. "Hi, Daddy," she said, kissing my cheek like I was a distant uncle she saw once a year. "You look good." Lies dressed up like compliments. Mark, her husband, shook my hand like a guy sealing a bank deal, not visiting his wife's father. "Thanks for having us, James. Come on in. Lunch is ready." Over chicken, they made small talk. I asked about my granddaughter, Olivia, 16, bright, a real spark. "She's good," Lauren said. "We're helping her prep for Princeton." And there it was. Mark jumped in. "We were hoping to talk to you about helping with some of the costs." I nodded slowly. I saw this one coming from miles away. Then she hit me with the line that made my blood run cold. "We've already talked to Mark's dad, and Daniel agrees Princeton's the right call. He's very supportive." Daniel. The almighty Daniel. Economics professor, wine connoisseur, world's greatest father-in-law. Lauren worshipped him like he walked on water and farted wisdom. They said he invited all of us to his 70th birthday dinner next week. "You'll come, won't you, Dad?" I should have said no, but I didn't. I was curious. I wanted to see the circus in action. "Sure," I said, keeping my voice calm. "It'll be my pleasure." I didn't sleep much that week. Something about Lauren's tone at lunch stuck in my head like a splinter. The way she said Daniel agreed Princeton was the best choice, like his opinion was gospel, and mine didn't count for squat. You'd think after raising her, paying her tuition, and watching her grow into this sharp, competent woman, I'd at least have earned a seat at the decision table. But no. Daniel Fenton had that chair, and I was supposed to keep my mouth shut and open my wallet. The dinner was Friday. I put on my old navy blue Brooks Brothers suit, the one Linda always said made me look like a senator. It still fit, even if it smelled faintly of cedar in memory. Took a cab to Daniel's place, big modern thing in Westmoreland Heights, glass walls and polished floors, the kind of house that tries too hard to look like it isn't trying. Lauren met me at the door. She gave me that once-over scan like she was inspecting for defects. "You could have worn something a little more current, Daddy," she said under her breath. I just smiled. "This suit's seen more of the world than most people. It'll do." Inside, Daniel greeted me with that polished handshake that says everything and nothing. "James, glad you could make it. I hope you like Mediterranean cuisine. We hired a chef from Solana. I'm a meatloaf and mashed potatoes kind of guy," I said, "but I'll try anything once." That got a polite chuckle from the guests. Everyone else seemed to know each other, professors, gallery owners, people who spoke in carefully curated vocabulary like they were auditioning for NPR. I was seated between a woman who taught comparative literature at Columbia and some tech guy with slicked-back hair and an expensive watch. Across the table, Lauren sat between Mark and Daniel, all smiles and admiration, hanging on his every word. He went on about urban planning and the revitalization of downtown Toledo, quoting obscure architects like they were old friends. Lauren nodded like she was being educated by Plato himself. Then Daniel turned to me. "What's your take on the city's new housing projects, James?" I cleared my throat. "I think too many buildings these days are designed to impress from the outside but forget the people who live inside. Looks great in a brochure, leaks like hell in a storm." Some polite laughs. Daniel smirked. A practical perspective, as expected from someone with a background in construction. Lauren leaned in with a smile that felt more like an apology. "Papa's always been hands-on, engineering, nuts and bolts, very straightforward." That stung. She said it like it was a flaw. Later, while dessert was being served, Daniel cornered me near the drinks table. "Lauren tells me you're still living in that big house alone. Must be a lot to maintain at your age." I nodded. "It's my home. I built it with my own hands." "Of course, I respect that," he said, voice all silk. "But have you considered the burden it might become? Selling while you're still fully capable ensures you stay in control of the decision." I stared at him. "That sounds like advice dressed up as concern." "It's both," he said, too smoothly. "We all want what's best for Lauren and Olivia." There it was, not even subtle. When I got home that night, I stood in my hallway staring at the family photos, Lauren as a baby on my shoulders, her science fair ribbon in 8th grade, us at her graduation. That version of her, the one who used to laugh with me in the garage while I changed the oil in the old Chevy, felt like someone else's daughter now. And Daniel, with his polished words and intellectual snobbery, had somehow taken my place in her life. I wasn't just losing my house, I was losing the respect I'd built brick by brick. I couldn't stop thinking about that night, about Daniel casually suggesting I stay in control while I still could. The phrasing was slick, careful, but the meaning, crystal clear. They weren't just planting seeds, they were already drawing up the blueprints. And the worst part? My own daughter was holding the pen. I tried to shake it off, walked around the garden the next morning checking the roses Linda used to love. I remembered how she used to hum while trimming them, her wide-brimmed hat tilted just enough to keep the sun off her freckled nose. This house still echoed with her, through the floorboards, the kitchen drawers, the creak of the second stair from the top. And yet, to Lauren and Daniel, it was just square footage, waiting to be liquidated. That same week, I stopped by Morning Brew Cafe like I used to with Linda on lazy Saturdays. It's tucked between an old barbershop and a thrift store, nothing fancy, but the espresso's strong and the booths are deep enough to disappear in. I stepped in, letting the bell over the door ring, and what I saw next made my stomach drop. In the corner booth, Daniel was seated across from Lauren and Mark, papers spread out in front of them, the kind of conversation you don't have over casual coffee. I stood there for half a second too long before forcing myself to smile and walk over like I hadn't just seen them planning my fate. "Lauren," I said, loud enough for the whole cafe to hear. "What a surprise!" She jerked her head up like a guilty teenager. Mark looked like a deer in headlights. Daniel, cool as ice. "Dad, we were just, catching up," Lauren said, snapping the folder shut like it held state secrets. "Looks like more than catching up," I said, sliding into the empty seat next to her. "What's all this?" "Oh, just some investment stuff," Mark jumped in. "Daniel's giving us advice." "Real estate?" I asked, sipping the water the waitress set down. Among other things, Daniel replied smoothly. They're diversifying, trying to be proactive for Olivia's future. I nodded, but inside something twisted. My own daughter had never once asked me for investment advice. Me, who built a construction company from scratch. Me, who turned a one-man crew into a statewide contractor. But sure, let the tenured professor explain asset allocation. And what's the professor's take? I asked, playing along. Daniel smiled. I think we're entering a golden window for certain acquisitions, especially if some large properties suddenly become available. That wasn't subtle. That was a jab right to the ribs. Well, best of luck, I said, pushing back from the table. I hope your advisor knows what he's doing. I do, Daniel said, still smiling. I walked out without looking back. That night, I sat in my office and pulled out one of the old photo albums. Lauren, 6 years old, riding the mower with me. 13, her first science fair. 18, beaming in her cap and gown. I'd been there for every moment, every scraped knee, every heartbreak. I paid for her braces, her private school, her dream college. And now I was just an obstacle between her and whatever Daniel was coaching her to want. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My mind spun with questions I didn't want answers to. How long had they been scheming? When exactly did Daniel go from respected in-law to puppet master? And Lauren, was she in too deep to even realize what she was doing? By morning, I'd made up my mind. If they wanted to corner me like some fragile relic from a time gone by, fine, let them. But they'd learn real fast that James Whittaker wasn't built from paper. By the next morning, my decision had hardened like poured concrete. They wanted control, not care. They dressed it up in polished words and family concern, but under the suit jackets and polite smiles was plain manipulation. And I wasn't about to be bullied into surrendering my life's work, not by my daughter, and definitely not by a man who never picked up a hammer in his life. I called Lauren that afternoon, told her I wanted to have lunch, just the two of us. No Mark, no Daniel, just father and daughter. She hesitated. Dad, I've got a lot going on. Maybe in a couple of weeks. Lauren, I cut in, firm but calm. This is important, she exhaled. Okay, Friday. I can do an hour. We met at a small bistro near her office, one of those minimalist spots with overpriced salads and cold air that smelled like lemon water. She showed up 15 minutes late, wearing that sharp blazer she always wore when she wanted to look serious, or superior. Sorry, she said, barely glancing up from her phone. Meeting ran long. It's fine, I said, waving it off. I'm glad you came. She ordered a kale Caesar and water. I went with a club sandwich and coffee. I wasn't here to impress. So, she said, checking her watch before we even started, what's this about? I looked at her, really looked, and saw the distance that had crept in over the years. The little girl who used to sit on my lap and beg for bedtime stories was long gone, replaced by someone who flinched at honesty and worshipped polish. I think we've drifted, Lauren, I said quietly, and I want to understand why. She blinked. What do you mean? We see each other regularly. When you need something, I finished for her, or when Daniel has a new suggestion. She stiffened. That's not fair. Daniel's been helpful. He has experience. And I don't? I asked. I built a company from the ground up. Paid your way through private school, college, helped with your first house. When did my opinion become second tier? She didn't answer. Lauren, I saw you at the cafe with Daniel and Mark. I saw the paperwork. You're planning something. She froze, then looked down at her salad. We're just exploring options, she muttered. Options that include selling my house out from under me? Dad, she said, finally meeting my eyes, you're 77. That house is too big. It's too much to manage. You should be somewhere simpler, closer to us. Or closer to Daniel. Her jaw tightened. Don't do this. Then be honest with me. If I'd agreed to sell the house and hand you the money, would we even be having this conversation? She didn't answer, and her silence was louder than anything she could have said. I'm not your problem, Lauren. I'm your father. I never said you were a problem, she said, her voice cracking. But you make everything so hard. You won't listen. You shut everyone out. Because the only thing I hear from you lately is how I need to get rid of the life I built." She stood up suddenly, grabbing her purse. "This was a mistake. I don't have time for guilt trips, Dad." "No," I said, standing too, "but you had time for secret meetings and planning sessions." Her eyes burned, but she didn't speak. She turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving her salad untouched and a cold knot tightening in my chest. I sat back down, finished my sandwich slowly, and stared out the window. The worst part wasn't the argument. It wasn't even the disrespect. It was knowing that my own daughter no longer saw me as family, just an asset. That lunch stayed with me like acid in my gut. I kept replaying it over and over, the stiff tone, the unfinished salad, the way Lauren walked out without a single glance back. It wasn't anger I felt afterward. It was something colder, something heavier, like grief, but different, like I was mourning someone who was still alive but gone all the same. For the next few days, I tried to stay distracted. I drove out to the Lake Linda and I used to visit in the fall, bought some books from Hamish's store, started reorganizing the garage just to keep my hands busy. But no matter what I did, that feeling kept following me like a shadow. Then came the punch in the gut I didn't see coming. It was a sunny Wednesday morning. I was walking downtown, taking the long route to the bookstore, when I passed by the Prestige Motors dealership. Big glass windows, shiny chrome letters, and right there, parked front and center, was a brand new Porsche, silver, sleek, impossible to miss. I wasn't a car guy, never had been, but even I could admit that thing looked like a bullet built for bragging rights. As I stood there, just admiring it for a second, a salesman stepped out, smiled at me like I had a briefcase full of cash in my hand. "You thinking about trading up?" he joked. "Just looking," I said. "That's a nice piece of machinery, though." "Absolutely. That model just came in, already sold, though. Gentleman got it as a birthday gift. 70 years old, if you can believe it. Gift from his son and daughter-in-law. Big moment." I felt my chest tighten. "You wouldn't happen to remember the name, would you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He laughed. "We're not supposed to say, but it's not a big deal. Daniel Fenton. Really nice guy. He was thrilled." I stood there frozen. Daniel, Portia, birthday. The pieces clicked into place so fast it made me dizzy. Lauren and Mark had asked me for financial help, told me they were stretched thin trying to cover Olivia's future, but somehow, in the middle of that plea, they scraped together enough money to buy Daniel a brand new Porsche. I didn't say another word to the salesman, just nodded and walked away. When I got home, I poured myself a scotch, strong, neat, and 2 fingers deeper than the doctor would allow, sat in my chair, let the silence wash over me while the truth burned in my throat. It wasn't about the car. It was what the car represented. It was proof. Undeniable, gasoline-scented, chrome-plated proof that Daniel wasn't just the favored in-law. He had taken my place entirely. Lauren didn't just respect him. She admired him, trusted him, rewarded him. And me? I was just the man who kept the lights on for 20 years, the man who built her childhood home and stood in the background while others were toasted at dinner. I called her that evening. She didn't answer. I left a message, "Call me, it's important." She didn't call back that night or the next day. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt intentional, like a door being closed on purpose. I couldn't help but wonder how long this had been building, how long Daniel had been slowly reshaping the way Lauren saw me, how long I'd been standing in my own house, blind to the fact that I'd already been replaced. I didn't sleep that night either, but unlike before, I wasn't lost in doubt. I knew exactly what I needed to do. They wanted to play chess? Fine. It was time I stopped being the quiet pawn and started acting like the man who built his own kingdom, brick by goddamn brick. The next morning I stood in my kitchen staring out the window, the scotch from the night before still clawing at the back of my throat. I didn't feel regret. I felt clarity. A rare, sharp kind of clarity that cuts through the noise and tells you it's time to take control or get swallowed whole. They thought I'd be passive, that I'd go quietly, that I'd get tired and get old and hand over everything I built without so much as a question. They underestimated me. Hell, maybe I'd underestimated myself. I didn't wait for Lauren to call back. I didn't give her another day or another inch. I called my lawyer. Edward Hines had been my attorney for over 30 years, 70 years old himself, still sharp as a tack, still wore suspenders like he'd just stepped out of a courtroom in 1975. When I told his assistant I needed to see him, she cleared his schedule for the next morning. That's how long we'd known each other. When I walked into his office downtown, Edward stood to greet me with that same gravelly voice and firm handshake. "James Whitaker," he said, "you don't come through that door unless something's serious." "It is," I said, taking a seat. "I'm selling the house." His eyebrows went up. "I thought you were staying there till they buried you under the roses." "That was the plan. Plans change." He leaned back in his chair. "Talk to me." I told him everything. About the birthday dinner, about Daniel's manipulation, about the Porsche, about the cafe meeting, the cold conversations, and finally, the feeling that my own daughter was waiting for the ink to dry on the back of my life so she could flip it for profit. Edward listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. "Damn," he muttered when I finished. "I always thought Lauren had more sense." "She's not thinking for herself anymore," I said. "She's thinking through Daniel." He tapped his pen against the desk. "So, you want to sell?" "Yes. And I want it done quickly, quietly, and without a single whisper reaching her ears until the ink's dry." "You got a place in mind?" "Something small, one story, outside the city. Enough space for books, coffee, and quiet." He nodded again. "You selling to move on or to make a point?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Both." "Fair enough," he said. "We'll handle the sale confidentially. I'll update your will while we're at it. And one more thing," I added. "I want to convert the proceeds into an annuity, one that pays out for the rest of my life and dies with me." He paused, then smiled. "You want to make sure there's nothing left to fight over?" "Exactly." "Cold," he said, "but smart." "Not cold," I corrected. "Measured." Edward started drafting the paperwork that same day. We called a top-end real estate agent who worked exclusively off-market. No signs, no public listings, no neighborhood gossip. Just high-end, confidential placements to vetted buyers. Her name was Mallory. Sharp-eyed, late 50s, moved through the house like she was scanning for diamonds. "Mr. Whitaker, this is a gem," she said. "You kept this place in immaculate shape." "It's not just a house," I said. "It's my life's work." "Well, it's going to move fast, discreetly, as requested." That night I sat in the living room with the window open. The air smelled like cut grass and the last bloom of summer. I looked around at the walls, the photos, the memories, and I didn't feel sadness. I felt freedom. They'd taken me for a relic, a burden. Now they'd see what I really was. The man who built everything, and who damn well knew how to dismantle it on his own terms. By the time Mallory had the photos taken and the listing quietly pushed through her private network, I already had 3 offers, 2 from couples in Chicago, 1 from a retired doctor in Virginia, all of them above asking. No open houses, no neighbors snooping, no whispers to Lauren. Just clean, quiet movement. Exactly how I wanted it. While Mallory handled the buyers, Edward finalized the annuity setup. We reviewed the terms 3 times to be sure. Every penny from the house sale, after paying off taxes and fees, would go into the annuity. It would pay me monthly until I died. When I did, the rest would disappear into the contract. No inheritance, no estate discussions, no family squabbles. I asked Edward to update the will too, just in case. Olivia would still get a modest education fund, enough for tuition and books. The rest? It would go to charity, veterans housing, hospice care, organizations that actually helped people, not just made them feel powerful. "You're going scorched earth," Edward said, not judging, just observing. "No," I told him. "I'm building a firewall." Lauren still hadn't called. Not once. Mark didn't reach out either. I suppose they were still waiting for me to come to my senses. Or maybe they assumed silence meant I was thinking about things the right way now. Let them think whatever they wanted. I found a new place, too, a small house just outside Lakeview, 1 floor, 2 bedrooms, a little garden out back. Quiet neighborhood, no traffic, no noise, no Daniel. Mallory helped me put down an offer. It was accepted within hours. I didn't tell anyone, not a soul. Not until the final purchase contract on my house was signed, notarized, and locked in. Then, almost like clockwork, Lauren showed up at my front door. No call, no warning. Just appeared. I opened the door and she looked nervous, wound tight. Her eyes were darting and her jaw clenched like she was bracing for a hit. "Hi, Daddy," she said, stepping inside before I could even answer. "We need to talk." I shut the door behind her. "About what?" She turned to me, her voice brittle. "Are you really selling the house?" I didn't blink. "Yes, it's done." She staggered back half a step, like someone had shoved her in the chest. "Why? Why would you do that without talking to us first?" "I thought you'd be happy," I said. "You and Mark have been pushing me to sell for months." "Not like this," she snapped. "You went behind our backs." "No," I corrected. "I went without your permission. That's not the same thing." She looked around the living room like it might disappear in front of her eyes. "This is our family home. I grew up here, Olivia. She's always loved it. We thought one day—" "You thought it would be yours." She went silent. "That's what this has been about the whole time, hasn't it?" I asked. "Not my well-being, not my future, just the damn house." Tears welled in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or rage, maybe both. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Daniel said—" I cut her off. "There it is. Daniel said, Daniel planned, Daniel advised. You let that man talk you out of your father's worth. That's not true." "No? Then why didn't you buy me the Porsche?" She flinched, hard. "You think I didn't know?" I asked. "You think I wouldn't find out what you gave him while you were in my living room asking for help with tuition?" "Daddy, please." I shook my head. "It's done, Lauren. The house is sold. The money's gone where it needs to go. I'll be moving in 2 weeks. Her mouth opened, then closed. "Where?" "Not your concern." "But what about us?" That word, us. I looked her dead in the eyes. "You made that choice the day you forgot I was your father and started treating me like a bank account." Lauren didn't say anything for a long time after that. She just stood there in the living room, surrounded by the very walls she once called home, like she was seeing them for the first time, or maybe realizing she'd never really looked at them at all, not with respect, not with care, only calculation. "I didn't mean for things to get like this," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "But they did," I replied, "and now we're here." She took a shaky breath. "Daddy, we were just trying to make sure you were okay, that you weren't overwhelmed." I stared at her. "Overwhelmed? You mean the man who built this house with his bare hands, the one who spent his life climbing scaffolding, managing crews, writing checks when payroll came up short? That man? He's suddenly too fragile to mow the lawn?" Her eyes filled again. "You're twisting everything." "No, Lauren, I'm finally seeing it straight." She moved toward the window, looking out at the garden Linda once tended like it was sacred. I watched her shoulders rise and fall. She was trying to compose herself, trying to find an angle where she could still steer the conversation back in her favor. "Where are you moving?" she asked again, quieter this time. "Lakeview." She turned around. "That retirement place?" "It's not a place. It's a home with peace, with space, with no strings." Her face twisted. "You'll be alone out there." "I've been alone in this house for 20 months, I said flatly. "Difference is, now I'll be alone on my own terms." She didn't like that answer. I could see it. She wanted me unsettled, doubtful. But I'd already been through that phase. I was past it. "And what about the sale?" she asked. "Where's the money?" I crossed my arms. "You don't need to worry about that." "Daddy—" "It's gone," I said. "Locked. Converted. It'll take care of me for the rest of my life. That's all that matters." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. She couldn't. Finally, she dropped into the chair across from me. You really think I don't care about you? I let the question hang in the air, not out of cruelty, but because I wanted her to feel the weight of it. I think you stopped remembering who I am, I said. I think somewhere between Mark's ambitions and Daniel's lectures, you rewrote me into a background character in your life. That's not true, she said softly. Then why was Daniel the one you went to for guidance? Why did he get the Porsche? Why did I get a lecture and a list of things I should change? She looked away, unable to answer. I'm not angry about the gift, I added. I'm angry about what it symbolized. You honored a man who walked into your life halfway through. You ignored the one who carried you into it. Lauren wiped at her eyes, frustrated. I just thought Daniel understood things better. Money, education, the future. And I understand grit, I said. I understand sacrifice. That's what built your future, Lauren, not Daniel's degrees. We sat in silence. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain, like a daughter again, not a strategist. I'll call you when I've moved in, I said, standing. You can visit if you want, but I'm done chasing approval. She stood too, slowly. I didn't come here for approval. No, I said. You came because you realized the money wasn't going where you thought it would. Her face tightened again, but she didn't deny it. I walked her to the door. Take care of yourself, Daddy, she said, voice low. I always have, I replied, and closed the door behind her. The door closed with a finality I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just wood meeting frame, it was a line drawn. The kind you don't step over again without knowing damn well what you're doing. I stood there for a moment, listening to the hollow silence on the other side. No footsteps, no hesitation. Lauren walked away, and for once I didn't follow her in my thoughts. That night I sat in my office, staring at the boxes I'd packed over the past week. Books, photo albums, tools I barely used anymore but couldn't bring myself to leave behind. And Linda's things, her scarf, her sketch pad, her perfume bottle still half full. I wrapped it all carefully like it might shatter in my hands. I wasn't mourning the house. I was mourning what it once held. The next morning I finalized everything with Edward. The sale would close in 6 days. The check would be wired directly into the annuity. My new home was already waiting, freshly painted, small, quiet, exactly what I needed. I picked out furniture, made arrangements for moving day, even signed up for the community chess club. They held games every Thursday evening. I hadn't played in decades, but I figured it was time I remembered what it felt like to win something again. 2 days before the move, Mark called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. James, he said, voice stiff and professional, I was hoping we could have a quick word. About? I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said. Lauren's very upset. I noticed. We were all just trying to plan for the future, he continued, for Olivia, for you, for what's best. I didn't laugh. I wanted to. Instead, I let the silence stretch. You're selling the house, he said. That's your right. But I think there are better ways to what? Use the money? I interrupted. He cleared his throat. Yes, ways that would benefit everyone. And by everyone, you mean you and Daniel? That's not fair, James. Isn't it? I said. You didn't want me to make decisions. You wanted me to make donations. He started to respond, but I cut him off. It's done, Mark. The house is sold. The funds are locked in. There's nothing to argue about. There was a pause on the line, the kind of pause people use when they're trying to hold back the truth. Lauren feels betrayed, he said. She betrayed herself, I replied. She made a choice. I made mine. Mark sighed, low and annoyed. You're making a mistake. No, I said calmly. I'm making sure I don't end up begging for respect from people who only show up when the checkbook opens. Roger that, he muttered. I guess there's nothing more to say. I guess not. He hung up without saying goodbye. That evening I finished the last of the packing. I labeled the boxes. I ordered the moving truck. Then I sat outside on the patio one final time. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky in golds and reds like a goodbye kiss from the world I was leaving. Funny thing about silence, it doesn't hurt you. What hurts is realizing who chooses to fill it and who chooses to stay away from it. And right now, the only sound I needed was the wind brushing against the shingles I'd hammered in with my own hands 25 years ago. This chapter was done. The next one, it would belong entirely to me. The movers showed up at 8 a.m. sharp. Two guys, both younger than the boots I was wearing, full of energy and a little too cheerful for the mood I was in. I gave them black coffee, told them to start with the boxes in the garage, and stayed out of their way. It was strange, watching your whole life get stacked and labeled like some inventory clearance. The living room was the last to go. That's where the memories hit hardest, the corner where Olivia used to build pillow forts, the spot on the couch where Linda used to fall asleep during old detective shows. I stood there with my hands in my pockets while the crew wrapped the furniture in padded blankets and made it all vanish, piece by piece. By noon, the truck was full. The house echoed. You never realize how loud emptiness can be until you're standing inside it. I locked the door one final time and left the keys in the mailbox for Mallory to collect. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I'd already felt everything in the weeks leading up to this moment. I was drained, emptied out like the rooms behind me. And now? I was free to feel something new. The drive to Lakeview was quiet, just the hum of the tires and the occasional crackle of gravel under the wheels. When I pulled into my new driveway, I took a deep breath. The house wasn't grand. It wasn't flashy. But it was mine. Paid for, uncomplicated, no ghosts waiting inside. The movers followed, carried everything in while I pointed them from room to room. By 3 p.m., I had a livable mess, boxes everywhere, my recliner shoved in a corner, books stacked on the kitchen counter. But it already felt better, like the air here didn't come with expectations. That evening, I took a walk around the neighborhood. Kids rode bikes, sprinklers were going. A couple of old men sat on a bench playing dominoes. One of them waved, I waved back, simple, uninterested in legacy, in power, in who owned what. Just life, going on. The next day, I set up my office, desk by the window, lamp, my old notepad. I wasn't sure what I'd do in there yet, maybe write, maybe just sit and listen to the birds outside, but it felt good to have a space that was mine, not borrowed by anyone else's vision. I didn't hear from Lauren, didn't expect to. But on the third evening, as I was arranging books on the shelf, I got a knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was. Not dressed up, no blazer, just jeans and a windbreaker, hair tied back, no makeup. She looked tired, and younger, somehow. "I didn't think you'd come," I said. "I didn't think I would either," she replied. I stepped aside. "You want to come in?" She nodded and walked in slowly, scanning the room like she was taking in a museum exhibit. "It's small," she said. "It's enough." She sat down on the arm of the recliner. I stayed standing. "I don't know where we went wrong," she said. "We stopped listening," I replied. "You to me to you." And then someone else filled the silence. She looked down. "Daniel didn't mean harm." "Maybe not. But harm isn't always about intention. Sometimes it's about what we let happen." She nodded slowly. "I didn't come for the money," she said. "I know. I came to say I miss you." That hit harder than anything else had. I sat down across from her, folded my hands. "Then let's start from there," I said. "No Porsche, no house. Just us." She smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked real. We sat there for a long while, just breathing the same air without a script. No agendas, no pretenses. It was awkward at first, like we were strangers who vaguely remembered each other. But the silence wasn't sharp anymore, it was soft. We were both testing the weight of this fragile thing between us. "Do you need help unpacking?" Lauren asked eventually. I shook my head. "I like knowing where everything goes." She looked around at the stacks of books, the neatly labeled boxes. "Looks like you've got a system." "I've always had a system," I said. "You just stopped seeing it." She nodded slowly. "You're right. I did." That small moment of honesty cracked something open. She didn't cry. I didn't either. But there was something real in the way her voice softened. We weren't healed, not yet. But at least we were facing the wound together. She stayed for an hour, helped me shelve a few books, made a cup of tea in the new kitchen. At one point she reached for a photo frame I hadn't unwrapped yet. It was one of the few I brought from the old house, me and Linda on our 25th anniversary. Lauren was in the background, all braces and bangs, smiling like she didn't know the world could turn hard. "She loved this picture," Lauren said. "She loved everything," I replied. "That was her problem." Lauren smiled sadly. "And you loved quietly. That was yours." I didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. When she left that evening, she hugged me. Not a quick, dutiful squeeze, but a real one. The kind you feel in your chest. I stood on the porch as she walked to her car. She turned back just before getting in. "I'll come again, if that's okay." "It is." After she drove off, I went back inside and sat in my chair. There was peace there, not victory, not revenge, just peace. And that meant more than I expected. The next morning I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name, written in block letters. Inside was a single page, typed, formal, cold. Daniel. He wrote that he'd heard from Lauren, that he respected my decision to reallocate assets as I saw fit, but wished I'd involved the family in the transition. He wrote that he hoped Olivia wouldn't suffer from the emotional fallout, that he'd always made choices with the broader family's stability in mind. There was no apology, no ownership, just veiled criticism wrapped in etiquette. I folded the letter once, clean and sharp, and tossed it into the trash. That man wanted to control the narrative until the very end. But the truth was simple. He didn't lose because I outplayed him. He lost because he never understood the board to begin with. You can't outmaneuver someone who's no longer playing the same game. Later that week, Olivia called. Her voice cracked when she said, "Grandpa, I heard you moved." I told her yes, and that she could come see the place any time. She came the next day, brought her backpack, her sketchbook, her energy. She walked in like a whirlwind and lit up the whole room. She hugged me tighter than I expected and said, "Mom told me everything." I braced for judgment, but she just smiled. "I think you did the right thing." That moment, that one sentence, it made every painful step worth it. We spent the afternoon planting tomato seedlings out back. She told me about Princeton, about books she was reading, about a boy she liked but wasn't sure about yet. I listened. I gave advice when she asked for it, nothing more. And when she left, I realized I didn't lose a family. I just reclaimed my place in it. The day after Olivia left, I stood in the backyard staring at the small garden bed we'd planted together. The soil was still dark from watering, and the little green leaves were already lifting toward the sun like they knew they belonged there. That's how I felt, too. For the first time in years, planted, rooted. Not in a house, but in peace. I spent that week putting things in order. Hung the framed photos where I wanted them, found an old tool bench for the shed. Started waking up early again just to sit by the window with my coffee and watch the neighborhood come alive. It wasn't busy, it wasn't loud, but it felt right. Lauren texted now and then. Nothing heavy, just check-ins. A photo of Olivia at school, a joke about how Mark burned dinner. She was trying in her way. I didn't rush her. Bridges don't rebuild themselves overnight, especially when they've been lit on fire from both ends. Then one afternoon I got a knock at the door. I opened it, and there he stood. Daniel. Dressed like always. Pressed shirt, polished shoes, smug posture. Except this time his eyes weren't smug. They were careful, calculated, like a man who thought he was walking into a business meeting, not a reckoning. "James," he said with a nod, "I hope this isn't a bad time." "It is," I said, but stepped aside anyway. He entered like he owned the air, looked around with that silent superiority, taking inventory. He didn't comment on the house, but I saw it all over his face. It was smaller than he expected, less than what he'd imagined I'd settle for. He sat without being asked. Typical. "I came to clear the air," he began. "I think there have been misunderstandings between us." "You don't say." He gave a half smile. "Look, I know how things must have looked. The Porsche, the advice, the meetings. But everything I did for the family." "That's your story," I said. "You've stuck to it well. I never intended to alienate you," he continued. "But Lauren was worried. You were isolating, making decisions without including her. She's not entitled to every decision I make. She's your daughter. And I'm her father," I said sharply, "not her property manager." He held up his hands like he wanted peace. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to propose a path forward, reconciliation." I stared at him, waiting. "I think Olivia deserves stability, unity. If we can find some common ground, maybe revisit the family structure, the estate." I stood up. "That's enough." He blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're not here for reconciliation," I said. "You're here to negotiate control, again." He started to speak, but I cut him off. "You thought you were the future, that you could replace me in my daughter's eyes, in my granddaughter's. And for a while, you did. You had them believing I was outdated, inconvenient." He said nothing. "But let me be clear about something, Daniel. You'll never have my respect, not because of the Porsche, not even because of the manipulation, but because when you had a chance to treat me like family, you treated me like a liability." Daniel stood up now too, straightening his shirt like he was still holding on to some sliver of dignity. "You've made your point." "No," I said. "You made mine." He looked around one last time, like he couldn't quite believe I'd come out of all this stronger than before. "You know," he said, almost under his breath, "this was never personal." I stepped closer. "It was to me." He walked out without another word. No handshake, no nod, just silence. When I closed the door behind him, I didn't feel anger. I felt release. After Daniel left, I stood at the window and watched his car disappear down the quiet street. Not fast, not in a hurry, just steady, like a man who still believed he could outlast the fallout. But what he didn't understand, what he never would, is that I wasn't trying to win anymore. I'd already won the moment I stopped playing by his rules. I walked back to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of iced tea, sat at the table, let the silence settle, like dust. I thought maybe I'd feel some kind of vindication, some last hit of adrenaline from standing my ground, but what I felt instead was calm. The kind of calm that only comes when you've said every word you needed to say and know you'll never need to say it again. The next day, Olivia came back. She bounced through the door like she owned the place, hair in a ponytail, sneakers squeaking on the floor, carrying a grocery bag with ice cream and sandwich bread like it was gold. "Mom said you might need supplies," she said, grinning. "I think she was talking about food, not sugar," I replied. "Sugar is food." She pulled 2 spoons from the drawer, and we ate straight from the tub like we used to when she was 10. After a while, she asked if she could stay the weekend. "Of course," I said. We spent the next 2 days the way only grandparents and grandkids can, slow, easy, without schedules. We planted more herbs, reorganized my bookshelf, and she helped me set up my old record player. I hadn't used it since Linda passed, but somehow hearing Sam cook again filled the house with something warm, familiar. Saturday night we sat outside with 2 lawn chairs and a blanket. "Do you miss the old house?" she asked. "I miss what it used to feel like," I answered, "not the place itself." She nodded. "I think I understand that now." I looked over at her, 17 years old and already seeing the world more clearly than most grown men, and then she said something I'll never forget. "You didn't run away, Grandpa. You just walked away when it was time." I don't know if she meant to give me peace, but she did. Sunday afternoon, Lauren came to pick her up. She didn't come in, just waited by the car, arms crossed, my sunglasses on. Olivia gave me a long hug and whispered, "I'll be back soon." "I know," I said. Then she looked me in the eye. "She's trying. Don't give up on her." I nodded, not because I was making promises, but because I wanted her to know I heard her. After they drove off, I walked back inside and opened the drawer by my desk. Inside was a letter, not from Daniel, not from any lawyer. It was from Linda. I'd forgotten about it, found it during the move, tucked in the back of a photo album. Dated 2 months before her diagnosis. It was short. James, if you're reading this, it means you've had to figure things out without me. I hate that. But I trust you. You've always protected this family even when they didn't see it. If they forget what you've done, remind them with grace. If they push you out, stand taller. You built this. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. I love you. I read it twice, then again. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I let myself cry. Not because I was broken, but because I'd finally healed enough to feel it. The letter stayed on my desk for days. Every time I walked past, I glanced at it like Linda was still speaking. And maybe she was. Maybe some words don't fade just because the voice that wrote them is gone. They echo louder in a different way. I started sleeping better, eating better. There was no one to impress anymore, no image to maintain. Just mornings filled with sun through the kitchen window and evenings spent watching birds fight over the feeder Olivia hung out back. Life had shrunk in size but grown in clarity. Every little thing felt earned. A week later, Lauren called. Not a text, a real call. I picked up. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi. I've been thinking about what you said, about Daniel, about me." I didn't answer. I wanted her to continue on her own, not with my help. "I think I was scared," she admitted. "After Mom died, I didn't know how to handle things. Mark was no help. And Daniel, he always had an answer, even when I didn't ask for one." "That's how people like him work," I said. She paused. "I let him make me doubt you. That's on me." That was the first time I'd heard her take responsibility for any of it. Not shift the blame, not bury it under justifications. Just own it. "Thank you," I said. "I want to fix things," she added. "I don't know how yet, but I want to." "Start by showing up," I told her. "Not with solutions, just with truth." She let out a breath. "I can do that. Then we're okay." It wasn't a grand moment. No tears, no dramatic music swelling in the background. Just two people trying again after letting too much space grow between them. That was enough. 2 days later, she showed up with Olivia again. No Daniel, no Mark, just the two of them, holding a bag of groceries and a pie. "Homemade," Lauren said. "Store-bought," Olivia corrected with a grin. We laughed. We had dinner together at my kitchen table. Chicken pot pie, salad, ice cream for dessert. Nothing fancy. But it felt bigger than any meal I'd shared in years. After we ate, Lauren offered to help clean. I almost said no, but then I saw the look in her eyes. She needed to do this. So I handed her a towel and we did the dishes together, side by side like we used to when she was a teenager and too proud to ask for allowance. "You know," she said, drying a plate, "I used to think you were impossible to please." "I probably was," I admitted, "but not because of you." She looked over. "Then what?" "Because I was scared too. Scared of getting old. Scared of losing Linda. Scared of becoming invisible." She nodded slowly. "I think we were both just trying to stay in control." I looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman she'd become, flawed, strong, still learning. "I'm proud of you," I said, even when I didn't say it. Her eyes watered. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see you again." "I'm still here," I said. "That's what matters." Later that night, after they left, I stood in the doorway looking at the quiet street. The air was warm, and the porch light buzzed gently above me. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel alone. I felt ready, not for another fight, but for whatever came next. Spring rolled in with that slow confidence only nature seems to master. The trees behind my house grew fuller. The breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine, and for the first time in a long while, my hands itched to build something, not out of necessity, but desire. I started small, a wooden bench for the backyard, then a new birdhouse. Olivia helped me paint it bright red with white trim. Said it looked like a barn for tiny birds. I told her I might move into it myself if things got too noisy around here. She laughed harder than I'd heard in months. Lauren came by every Sunday. She didn't bring agendas. She brought stories, old ones, childhood memories, Linda's favorite recipes. It was awkward at first, like we were easing into unfamiliar roles we should have known by heart. But every visit got easier, every meal more natural. She even asked me for advice again about work, about Olivia, about herself. It wasn't performative. She just wanted to know what I thought, and I gave it, without preaching, without conditions. Daniel never returned, not to my porch, not to my mind. Whatever grip he once had was broken. Maybe he stayed in the background, still spinning his ideas, still thinking he'd been wronged. But I had no use for that anymore. Some men chase control until they forget what peace looks like. I'd lived through that. I wasn't going back. Then one morning Olivia called from college. I got the internship, she said, breathless with excitement. It's in Boston. Summer program. Publishing house. That's great, kiddo, I said. You'll knock it out of the park. I was worried about the distance, but Mom said you'd tell me to go. She's right. I don't want you to feel like I'm disappearing. I smiled into the phone. You're not disappearing, Olivia. You're becoming. She got quiet. Then she whispered, Thanks for staying, you. That one knocked the wind out of me, because in the end, that's all I had done. I stayed me. Through the silence, through the betrayal, through the hollow goodbyes and unexpected homecomings, I didn't vanish. I didn't bend. I just stayed. A week later, I hosted a barbecue. Nothing fancy, just hot dogs, lemonade, some of the neighbors, a few card tables in the backyard. Lauren brought deviled eggs. Olivia brought a new book she thought I'd like. I played Sam Cooke on the old record player, and we sat out there under the fading sun like nothing had ever gone wrong. And maybe it hadn't. Maybe it had just gone sideways for a while. When the night was winding down, Lauren found me in the kitchen rinsing out cups. She didn't say anything at first, just leaned against the counter and watched me. I almost lost you, she said. I dried my hands. We almost lost each other. She nodded. I don't know how to make it all right. You don't have to, I said. You just have to keep showing up. She reached out and took my hand, held it like she used to when she was a little girl and the world felt too big. Thanks for not closing the door, she said. I thought about it, I admitted, but you knocked at the right time. That night, after everyone left, I stood outside under the stars. The wind was soft. The house was still. And somewhere in the garden a bird was singing, not loud, just enough to know it was still there, still alive, still home.